Well, Zal, we find ourselves at episode 5. And
Wow, we've already done 5?
I know. It actually is kind of stunning. I almost had to. I'm gonna have to break out another hand or maybe my toes next time to to do
Are
the
you guys
counting.
still out there listening?
If you are, I mean, thank you. That's, you know,
Absolutely. And for all the guys that are out there and gals that are supporting us, we really appreciate that. And I know we run long-winded. That's just the way we are.
that's true.
But I was hoping in the beginning, to just from the get is to thank everybody that's been supporting us. Thanks to everybody that's been listening. We really do appreciate it. And with that in mind, make sure that you like and subscribe. Please comment down below. And we'll
Absolutely.
get on with Alien Week.
Ah, yes, Alien Week and the big Banu controversy, if you will. Yeah.
Is it really?
I don't know.
It's a travesty.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting thing. I mean, the Star Citizen community, of course, is a wonderful community with lots of great people. There's also, it's a very vocal crowd. I think that comes from a couple places. I mean, I think a lot of people have invested a lot of time and energy and money into it, and they're definitely have an opinion on aesthetics, and so I think that really kind of came to fruition this week.
Well, you're going to have that with, Star Citizen is kind of unique in that sense, right? It's a game that's been backed by the community. So to be fair, everybody feels like they have a little bit of ownership in the game. And when people have an idea of what they feel like, things are going to be, you're going to have a little hard feelings on some of that. I mean, not that I think it's a real big deal, right? But, some people had an idea for what the Merchantman was going to look like. And some of those old pictures, we were talking about it earlier today about some of the very first, concept art for it. And how, it was really, really cool. I mean, we dig it. But with the way, things have evolved, I understand why they kind of took the general shape, but kind of took it in another direction because, yes, it looks alien, but, it definitely looks more Vanduul. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, and I think that you're absolutely hitting on what caused the division, right? You have all this, like concept art, and the concept art there are some earlier models of the concept art that really do show a much more sleek, pointed nose, and I do really like some of those things. But then some of the more recent concept arts, shows a rounded nose. Not quite the memeable nose that kind of ran through the kind of the community this week. But but there is these two different aesthetics, right? So, and I agree with you 100%. I do think there are a couple of pieces of concept art that really do almost overlap, in a way, the Vandal aesthetic. If you kind of look at the Vandal aesthetic, not 100%, but the more sharpened lines or whatever, and they seem to have maybe drawn, kind of either pulled back from that or went in a slightly different direction, and I think the people who really did kind of dig that sharp line aesthetic, they were very vocal on this change.
Look, I like that concept art from that time period. It's really, really cool.
It is.
It is very alien, like that most definitely. Although, I think when they were fleshing out the races, they decided that the Bandul were very, were the big baddies, right? So things needed to be a lot more pointy, a lot more sharp. So that kind of conflicts a little bit with the Banu that were kind of more organic. Their styles have a more kind of organic base to it.
And the big
if
sweeping
you,
lines, like if you if you think of
sweeping
the Banner
lines.
Defender, you know what I mean, and certainly the BMM now, for sure, it's got very very kind of wide sweeping design aesthetic, and so I mean that's definitely the direction that they wanted to head, and so in lieu of there not being an actual big alien ship reveal, it seems like what we got this week was kind of and maybe some would say a hurried look, but a gray box look at where they're at currently with the BMM.
Yeah, I think they scrambled to get it out just so they'd have something to kind of show, something to generate excitement. Although, I didn't think it went exactly the way they thought it was going to go. And I agree. I'm not necessarily a fan of that kind of flat duckbill looking nose, or however you want to describe it. They definitely took the basic shape of the 2017 concept, but if I was going to say, I'd probably prefer that style. And we spoke earlier this week, and it's like, if I had a criticism, I would say, if they just kind of sharpen the nose a little bit more, make it a little bit more streamlined, I think that would solve a lot of problems. I mean, they're in that in-between phase with it right now, where they could kind of change a few things. They're in that white box, gray box. Well, at least the outside is in that white box, but it still looks like the interior is still in a gray box. So
I think there might. We'll have to see, but I have a feeling they may stretch those lines just a touch, because I think it's not far away really from where it could actually kind of serve both purposes. But we'll have to see. I mean, maybe it is further along in the pipeline, and that's just the way it's going to come. But
honestly, it's really, it's really aesthetic, and it's, just really small little talking points. Really, it's not a big thing. Everything else, I feel like is pretty cool about it.
I mean, at the end of the day,
was really, for the exterior, that was my only criticism.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it really is about what's inside the BMM. I mean, that's kind of where all the magic happens. I mean, there's no question. I mean, I certainly understand. All of us have our own specific aesthetics that we like about ships or ship series or manufacturers or different people have different design language, or however you want to call it. But at the end of the day, I think what's inside the BMM is really kind of what's important. And so, I think that one of the things we were definitely going to speak to tonight is what we liked about the BMM and what we didn't like about the BMM. And I'm going to start with something that I loved about the BMM, which is that cavernous cargo hold. That thing kind of blew my mind. It's just like, how tall is that, and how on earth is my Drake mule going to get those boxes to the top of that pile?
They were stacked high. That
oh my
Rapunzel let down your hair, because holy crap, how are you going to get to the top of those boxes?
I'm not sure how that's going to work. I'm sure there must be some alien tech involved in getting that stuff up there. But I did love it. I mean, we certainly, that's internal cargo space, and an enormous amount of it. I think that's, when you're starting to get onto, 2,000 SCU or whatever, that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look pretty amazing. And that particular part, I mean, that made, if anything brought a smile to my face, like a visceral physical reaction, it was that moment. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Well, that's, one of the things where you can look at it and go, wow, that's a lot of cargo. And you got to think of it this way. It's, to date, the only carrying over 2,000 SCU that can land on a planet.
That's
because none of the hulls are able to do that.
That's a very good point. You know what I mean? That is actually something that can enter atmosphere and put an enormous amount of cargo on the ground. I didn't even think about that. That's a super important point that you're making with that, and maybe one of the real gems behind its design is that the fact that it is an atmospheric vessel.
Yeah, can land and take off from from surfaces. That's probably its big strong suit, right? Things that'll definitely be used now.
I couldn't agree more. You know,
especially after the cargo. What about?
So now I have some other questions about the use of space in the BMM, for sure. You know, I mean, there's, you know, I do think that I know that there's some family, or there's some kind of alien culture specific to the Banu about why some of the design is the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
But
because they live in a big kind of family corporations called Sulis.
Yeah, an interesting kind of like a family unit, exactly. So, you know, so there is some use of space. I did like the fact that they decided at the end, you know, even though it may be humans who purchased the ship, it's kind of Banu purpose built. So the chairs, you know, humans are going to look a little small in those. It's definitely designed for Banu at the end of the day. I really thought in the bridge it was interesting how you were, you know, they use that grav technology to kind of lift you up.
Kind of that Xi'an tech is what they're...
Yeah, that particular kind of that interlace technology from, you know, another race or whatever. Very cool. And I think...
You would think...
Go ahead.
Oh, you would think that you would, you know, the Banu are that type where they, you know, they're trading on that where... You would see, they would be the type of race you would see a lot of different technologies from other races in their designs. They like to pick the best parts, right, and use it. So
yeah, I mean they very much are into knowledge preservation. So something like cool technology would be something that they wouldn't hesitate, I think, to kind of use in their own ship language. You know, it's if it's a smart concept, they seem to want to, you know, introduce it. You know, and I think that they've done a pretty good. I mean, that Xi'an tech seems to be, you know, interwoven in one of their more culturally significant pieces of, you know, of their what they represent as a species. You know, they're big tradesmen, and the Banu merchantman is kind of like, you know, it's a flagship, you know, for a Suli, I would imagine. And
it's the pinnacle. It's what everybody strives for. Which then we get into the contradictions of their collective, right? So we were talking about this earlier about they couldn't, you know, even though it's a communal species, there always has to be a leader, or no one would, you know, make decisions. And I thought that was kind of funny when they described that about it not having a captain's chair, or, you know, they don't believe in captains because there's, you know, you have the organization, but there's always going to be the head of the organization that would be in control of that. And to me, that would be, you know, the head of the Suli would be the captain of a merchantman.
I mean,
I don't know how you could make decisions without, you know, somebody going, oh, this is what we're going to do.
You know, I mean, in combat situations in particular, you know, you can't have a collective. I mean, unless they have some kind of a consciousness we don't really understand or hasn't been, or maybe it's been laid out in lore and I haven't read it yet. Some kind of a hive mind. I think you even said that earlier tonight when we were talking about it.
That's what I was saying. You know, they're not like the Borg or, you know, some other species in like sci-fi, or you know, like the Tyranid, or, you know, things that have a hive mind,
right?
And even hive minds do have some sort of controller. Hive minds have queens, or, you know, someone leads it.
Well, so yeah, I mean, in a pressure situation, it can't be a communal decision. You know,
right.
You know, when there are split-second decisions that need to be made to save the ship or not, you know, I would imagine there has to be somebody that's either been, you know, put in some kind of an elected position who can make a decision, good or bad, you know, at that particular moment to save the ship or put the ship in a situation where you just do not have time to go around the room and say, hey, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? There needs to be an action taken now in order to solve that
That's
issue.
just our human thinking coming out. So
Yep.
yeah, so that was a little departure. Well, one of the things that I feel there's a lot of things that on the interior I did have criticisms of. There's a lot of things that I thought were very cool. Some that something that we spoke about before was that turret room, that giant it's like the big contemplation room that had the turret in it.
It does seem very almost like it's a strange room, right? There's an enormous amount of space. It's got its own walkway, and this could be really, I mean, it is in gray box, right? So there certainly could be a lot more there that we don't quite understand. I mean, but I will say that seemed like a very obscure use of space.
Well, to me, I feel like you could take the same concept, but with a lot less space. It just seemed extraneous that they used that whole big area. It could have been used for a lot of different other things. They could have squeezed it and got a few more things out of it than that one big room. To me.
Yeah, well,
that's just my criticism.
And one of the things is when you're flying a ship around in Star Citizen, they do have that circular kind of radar type thing, that's got kind of the rings, and it kind of, each one of those rings represents the distance the ship is away from you, and kind of, depending on the way that the lines are drawn. It's almost, that was an old, kind of an Elite type thing. I remember that being kind of a thing but the way that it is, it kind of gives you an idea of the orientation. I mean, if they do something like that in that room, or if you're in, it's almost like a life-size version of, a big version of that, where you're sit up in the turret and you can kind of look down and get a sense of kind of where somebody is based on, that type of thing. I mean, there really could be some kind of interesting uses. I didn't get the sense that was going to be the case, but... Yeah. It's just an enormous room. I mean, it is a very, very big room to just kind of have one walkway to one chair that just kind of floats up to a turret. And there maybe was a second chair kind of behind it.
Nope.
But there was something kind of, I thought kind of on the backside of that, but I don't recall exactly. I just remember being kind of awestruck by that particular design choice. In particular, that one was like, wow, that's an interesting use of space right there.
Oh, it looks cool. But the first thing I go, well, wow, did it have to be that big? You could actually made it just a little bit, just that one walkway out to that chair, and it would be, maybe 2 times wider than where the chair sits now, and then had plenty of space, and still kind of kept that little meditation chamber, so to speak, instead of it being 6,000 square feet. You could have shaved it down to a little bit bigger than a closet, right?
Maybe 600 square feet would have been a better use of space. Exactly. I agree. A 90% reduction in the size of that room would probably, and it would still have seemed like a big room for a turret. You know what I mean? So, but like I said, obviously we can't spend forever on that part. I think there were some other things that were really fascinating. Some of the communal rooms to me. The fact that it had 6 floors was just, 5 or 6, I believe it was 6 floors, was absolutely fascinating to me. And really, one of the things that they did a kind of a decent job at, but I still think it's got a long way to go, is exactly how the shop stuff is going to work, right? Because at the end of the day, the BMM is a fantastic cargo hauler, but it really is a kind of a floating shop, right? That's kind of one of the big concepts of it. And so
a starfaring mall.
It is, you know what I mean? And so one of the things that's fascinating to me, and I think you and I have hit on it in a couple times in our conversations, is what on earth is going to have to happen to Star Citizen, in order for there to be the type of variety of things in the verse that you could either collect or whatever to even have a shop that would warrant such a magnificent chip?
Well, it's going to have to be something that's really rare. Anything else, you're just basically reselling what you can buy in shops right now. Armor or guns or, ammo or, what have you. It's just basically, being a middleman for stuff that's already there. It would have to be something that would be completely, rare in that area. I mean, we spoke a little bit about, what its uses, what its use case could be. We see if you were in a remote system where it's hard to get supplies, that's a use case for it. Then, other than that, it would have to be something that you just couldn't get in a shop.
I mean, exactly. I agree with that. I mean, like, and I think you and I spoke about it a little earlier where we were talking about how I use kind of like an American colony, kind of as an example. I mean, every so often that trade vessel would show up and it would have salt, sugar, tea. I mean, those at least those three things, and then maybe there was shovels and iron things that they necessarily good forged things from back in Europe. And I mean, you got to think about the BMM in that capacity. Like, it should be able to kind of go 4 or 5 or 6 systems away and pick something up that's going to be rare and kind of bring that to the system or some kind of a frontier space where it's like, hey, the BMM's kind of coming through. I need to kind of fly up there and get myself a crate of or a 1 SCU box full of P4 ammo or seeds or whatever it is that you're going to need, potentially to repair parts or whatever. But there's going to have to be an enormous amount of change in Star Citizen in order to support something, like the BMM, especially that shop part of it. And I think, we don't necessarily want to get into an extensive conversation like we did on crafting before, but really it's going to have to be, the backbone is, I would imagine, would almost have to be crafting. I mean, I don't really see another way around it.
Yes, it's going to have to be unique items. Things that, crafting would fit that, where player-made items, things that you can't buy in shops. Whether that, like I said, we're not going to get too far into that, but things that you just can't buy in shops now, or at the very least, these super duper unique things that are, relics and other things like that possibly could be out in the verse. But then, these are, I guess, the idea is to trade up for those things, right? So if you had like a practical good that you were going to trade for, something that someone found, some unique item, some relic. Other than that, then, you would be out trying to also collect those things as well to put in your shops. And I believe that part of it is going to take a lot of work. There's going to have to be a lot of work into it. And, for you and I, we're totally on board with the crafting, coming up with a pretty cool crafting system.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I can honestly say I don't know that they've really spoken of a very in-depth crafting system. I don't know, but I definitely think that you're going to have that in Star Citizen in order to have the types of goods and materials, and really and hopefully have a situation where it's I think a very important thing will be able to create kind of one-offs, like where you have some XL1 drive that was just somehow or another through an RNG process, and just so a lot of time spent tuning it, and kind of some mini game or whatever that just kind of, they talk about the theoretical limits, right? And, for the super collider, something along those lines where it does kind of, I really hope that things don't remain kind of like this static, kind of right down the rails. Everybody has the exact same one. I'm perfectly willing to abandon balance. If you're willing to allow people to kind of collect the things, to make the things, to have some guy be the best, guardian, shield maker in the galaxy, that type of thing. I'm okay with that stuff. I really am. And that would be the type of thing that would bring people over to your merchant ship. You have something that your organization is better than, it may not be, maybe it's not the best one in the galaxy, but it's it's in the 90th percentile. It's definitely better than the one you have. You know what I mean? And maybe the one that's a 99th percentile, or something that's, they're charging, like 200 million AUEC for this thing, but these guys are charging 7 or 8 million a piece for, they're almost as good a ones, you know what I mean, type of thing. So
they're all their overclocked stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is definitely cool. And I'm all on board for that as well. Where, you can overclock ship parts, and, one of your shops is, buying the best ship parts, that type of thing.
Yep.
But it also goes into, what are you working off of? We're talking about, and don't get me wrong, very exciting with the super colliders and being able to overclock ship parts, and that gameplay and the engineering, all that is, super cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
And yeah, very excited. But also, we had spoken about before is gathering rare materials, setting up, with the way CIG wants things now is, take just the idea of Jump Town, trying to get everybody to go to one particular area that's contested and fight over it. Same thing could be done with rare materials.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
That's spawn up in different systems.
Yeah, jump system instead of not jump town. Yeah. Exactly, where these organizations are working together. They're trying to lock down the jump points. There is a resource bloom of some variety, and it is drawing, organizations after I mean, it's too important of a resource for people not to fight over. It's critical. And so that to me, that's going to be some of the real fun. When you really have to kind of bust in, kind of break through a blockade, bust into a system, and get yourself established.
Well, that'll create those. That'll create those.
Like the player-driven organic type.
Yeah, exactly. Those encounters that CIG is looking for.
Yeah, those tension hallways that people have to kind of travel down together, and get in a tight space, and organizations are just going to have to fight it out. I mean, that's what that's kind of that's really. I mean, I think in a very you think about Eve or whatever, something along those lines. I mean, just, some epic battles. You know what I mean? Now it's going to be a different scale. I mean, obviously, but yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, Jump Town is kind of a microcosm of what could happen in an entire system if there was something, some unique thing that just kind of either was discovered, and it might be it's something as simple as a jump gate, just an important jump gate that allows you to go past 3 or 4 systems and maybe establish a trade run that wouldn't normally be viable, or, it's just an interesting thing. I mean, so... so that's kind of, the BMM, I mean, I think it really kind of struck up a conversation amongst the community, some good, some bad. The one thing I want to say about Alien Week, that if I were to tell you that I was kind of hiding a secret hope, was that there was going to be some kind of an alien industrial ship. you know,
Oh yeah.
I think like an alien miner, something like that. That's just kind of outside kind of the meta, and I know that the mining loop is, got a lot of love. So don't get me wrong. I'm not, I understand we're in pretty good shape. But I was really hoping that there would be some kind of a reveal for some kind of an alien industrial ship of some variety. And of course, I wouldn't use the word disappointed by any stretch of the imagination. But it did, I do think I do think it would be a good thing to get one of those in the future. So sorry about that. You may hear my golden retriever barking in the background, and I apologize.
Everybody loves golden retrievers, brother.
Yeah.
Well, so it's something that we spoke about before is, the different, something that got brought up today is, the different alien races that would be in, or is, has, industrialization, in their
lineage, right? In their lineage, society. Exactly. Like House Gaddick, right? For instance, I mean, how they've been making industrial ships for the Xi'an for this looks like, I mean, from all accounts, what I read was centuries. So they've been kind of, that's, that would be a perfect example of a, and I understand they have the Raylan, which is the cargo hauler, but I think you and I have spoke about kind of some alien tech that would be cool, like on the mining side, for instance, which might be, like, I think it was cool how we laid out kind of the argument, not really I wouldn't say argument, but the idea earlier. Like if you're, let's say we're just for this for the sake of conversation, but like let's say you're a level 1 technological civilization, and so you're just kind of blasting things to mine. What's the next kind of theoretical step? What do you do next? You know what I mean? To kind of
next logical step
forward, right? And for something, and I think you brought up dark matter, like almost like you just kind of make.
Oh, that's like a tier 4.
That's exactly right. But maybe instead of sound was another thing that we had talked about. Potentially there being some kind of a sound wave that would, that could be, instead of it being a laser, like a sonic wave that would kind of
where you tune it to the right frequency to break matter up, because you can go ultrasonic and very powerful and, break rocks up. That would, that would be something you would think, be Xi'an check, right?
Yeah.
Have that Xi'an tech where, their big thing is anti-grav. Well, in the same sense, you would also believe that they would also deal in stuff that would be ultrasonic, stuff that were, you go beyond the molecular and break things down in the molecular level. So
yeah, all that stuff is just fascinating. I really do like the idea of kind of like, somehow doing some kind of a scan, like a sonar type scan, or some kind of a sound scan on, like, on something that you're going to mine, and then attaining its resonance, and then locating its fault points, and then kind of using that as a way to kind of crumble the material. What I mean? That type of
some
stuff.
Great little mini games, like how we mine now, but using wave patterns and lining things up and hitting the wave patterns just right to be able to break rocks up.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's what I think. And I'm not saying, I understand. There's just, I think with Squadron 42 and those types of things that are really kind of, maybe the pipeline is just where the pipeline is, right? And they do have a lot of ships that they've sold, and they've got to get out there. But I am really looking forward to some of the, some of the alien stuff that would be coming along those lines for that type of thing. Now, I don't know I don't know that there's ever been a conversation about that stuff. But I do think I do look forward to the Alien Week in the future when there's some kind of industrial ship, and and that's the direction.
Well, it's coming. It's got the, everybody's wanting that alien cool factor and something different. And you said, yeah, I mean, the mining gameplay loop is in a decent place for us right now, but we don't have that much variety as it relates to even different companies with different miners.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah, it's a relative statement, that's for sure. I agree. I mean, you're right. You would think that Drake or, you definitely think that there would be some other people that have, some other of the ship manufacturers would kind of get into the game. Consolidated Outland, definitely. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You could, so, I do have a secret hope that there's kind of a somewhere between, and I know this, it's not necessary per se, but somewhere between like the Prospector, get that 64 SCU 2-seater going. I'd be all right with that. You know what I mean? I think that would be a lot of fun, for mining as well. And, I think there's wiggle room. And I do think that there's wiggle room, and there is going to be some kind of a ship that's between the Mole and the Orion. I've seen on, Info Runners and some of the other, channels and, people talking about that. Of course, the Prospector's the small, the Mole's the medium, the Orion's the capital. So there is room for a quote-unquote large miner, that's going to be bigger than the Mole, but smaller than the Orion. And, and of course, there's going to have to be some back-end technology changes before that. You're going to have some bigger rocks, that type of thing, and potentially some other types of materials to mine as well. I mean, it couldn't all be just a bigger version of Quantanium mining.
Well, that also goes into, these unique things that spawn up in different locations that hold a lot of different value. I don't see where that doesn't come to play. We're talking about logical steps. That just seems like a logical step. They've mentioned, a lot more different materials to mine. That is coming. As a matter of fact, I think there's some new stuff when Pyro hits, as it relates to mining, and also bigger rocks. So those are out there. I definitely believe that, a step up from the Prospector. I think there's plenty of room there. There's definitely room above the Mole. And, things like Drake, other manufacturers that would come into play is what in the lore, what Drake used to be a salvage company. So, they got lineage in that industrial side. For Alien, the Xi'an definitely fit that bill.
Absolutely.
They have an industrial side to them. The Vandal, we kind of laughed about it today, but something that we're thinking about is they're more like strip mining. They strip mine the whole thing. So
yeah, they do. They grab everything of value and just leave the rest in kind of desolate state. They just smash and grab.
Yeah, when we were looking at the looking at that old concept design of the Merchantman, where we were comparing, the Merchantman with like some of the other big Vandal ships, like the King ship or something like that have that same design aesthetic with the with that skeletal structure and the sharp, pointy, blades and the, spiky bits. And,
yeah, or even like that hunter destroyer, almost like it, that type of thing. I mean, I know the merchantman's much smaller, but yeah.
But the one interesting was the driller. The ship, the driller. What's that? What's that thing? Is it a capital-sized ship that just basically blasts the surface of a planet and just eats up all the resources that way?
I mean, yeah.
How's that thing working?
That's a great question. I mean, that is a 720 meter long vessel. I mean, that's an enormous vessel. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and of course, who knows how many of these are going to be fleshed out exactly or whatever, but that's at least the concept art, you know what I mean? And so it actually can carry a harvester. So that's,
not to contradict, but it's 2,400 meters long.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. Like, the thing that this little kind of whiteboard that I was looking at here shows Vandal Driller Harvester Carrier 720 meters. So no big deal. I mean, I'm sure there's different, different sizes on different pieces of concept art for sure. And so,
yeah, I think we ran into that where, there's not everything is completely standardized.
Well, it seems like maybe some of the third-party sites are more accurate than,
Yeah, that was from Star Citizen Wiki. That's their wiki page. So
that's crazy. I mean,
yeah, and then they were saying the Kingship was like 3,000 meters, and it had a beam of 1,180, which it was 1,180 meters wide. Holy cow!
That's crazy. I mean, that is a big ship. I mean, that's a gargantuan.
Is it one of those things where we go out in space and still like the driller, and still us a driller and roll back in, because that thing is going to be bigger than the Orion for sure.
It is.
But, it doesn't necessarily say what, it just says that it's an escort carrier. But, from the concept art, they're like blasting the surface of planets and things with it. So,
well, yes, exactly. And I mean, when we've seen some of, even in the game, within the game, where you fly the planes around, and I pretty much stick to the PU, but what's the jet with the fighter one that you can go into besides the PU? They have that one map where it looks like they're just, this whole planet's being destroyed by the super laser.
Oh, and the Arena Commander.
Yeah, an Arena Commander, exactly.
Yep.
I mean, there's definitely some large destructive either that's harvesting tech or destruction tech. Either way, I mean, there's got to be some resources down there that are probably worth salvaging. So, that's an interesting thing. I mean, talk about a cool idea for a system one time would be like to have big giant chunks of something like that's been destroyed, to kind of let almost enormous pieces of this stuff that you can kind of latch onto, and or potentially meteorites in space that are enormous that maybe even have caves in them or something like that, where there are valuable resources and different types of ships that are designed to kind of get you to, into a spot like that safely and get you out.
Do you see them building giant asteroids, kind of like those asteroids in like Star Wars, where the Millennium Falcon flies down into the thing?
Yeah, and whether or not there'll be organic life in there, I have no idea. But
yeah,
I would be. I mean, you've really got to have some variety. I mean, space has got to, it's a vast place. So I would imagine that there's going to be some enormous pieces of matter out there from old systems and old planets that have been destroyed or whatever. You know what I mean?
Just just massive chunks of metal.
Yeah, meteorite.
That
exactly.
Would be part of a planet that was destroyed, and some big other gravitational body pulled it out into what you would see as a big asteroid belt. I'd say at some point they do add those little mini planetoid type asteroids.
Yeah, I don't see how they avoid that. It almost
something that we could do surface mining. That was another thing that I was thinking about it too. Is they've said that the prospector was actually designed to also mine ore from veins.
Yeah, like kind of a borer or like that type of thing where it would drill down, right?
So are they gonna build that in with with the, it seemed where they were working on a little bit of the planet mesh where they were like using explosions to show that they can blow big holes, or big craters into the ground, and it would fill itself in. Is it going to be one of those things where they have large ore veins that go underground that you can drill down into? I mean, there's other games out there, even not even as technologically advanced as Star Citizen, stuff like Empyrean, where you can drill down into a planet and just keep going if you wanted to, and it procedurally generates the rock and things that you're mining through. It definitely does have different surface levels of things. It has the has the dirt on the top, and then it goes through kind of like a bedrock and kind of gravel, and then it goes into like more solid rock. So, I definitely believe Star Citizen can pull something like that off as well. So we could start mining deeper into things, or with that big little planetoid body, the big giant asteroid, that you could do. We've seen a lot of the concept art in the beginning of the Prospector just sitting on top of an asteroid, just drilling along.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Space Engineers comes to mind. I don't know how much of that you play, and I haven't played a lot of it. You know what I mean? I played it, Space Engineers a couple of nights with my nephew and my son, and they have that kind of thing where you can kind of like begin, you start making kind of like this hole, and you take off the top layer, and down you go, and eventually start finding like, some of the materials you're looking for, but it actually procedurally is gone then. Like you've changed the way it looks, type of thing. And so if somebody else comes along, I mean, that's the way it looks now. You've got a big hole right next, and you kind of need one because you got to go get the resources you need. So, it's going to be interesting. I mean, now all that stuff, I'm sure you would agree, is around the corner past Squadron 42.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking down the road quite a bit, and but I do think that that would be an amazing, an amazing way to kind of expand mining and really kind of fulfill one of the original kind of conceptual things that the Prospector, like in a way, you almost wonder if the Prospector doesn't like necessarily kind of find the thing, like that's what its job is. Like I know we're using it for more mining nowadays, but it's just like maybe to just kind of grab something and check the purity of it or something, and then be like, yeah, this is the spot you want to come with the bigger thing that really tears the stuff apart.
Well, that disc on the bottom of the Prospector is basically it's designed for subsurface detection of minerals.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen different people talking about that. It's some kind of a scanner that kind of scans into the ground and it gives you kind of a readout of what's in there, and then then you'd have your directional borer type of thing that would kind of maybe get to that stuff and pull out core samples in a way. And then at that point, you're like, once you've kind of like, yeah, this is the place, this is some really good, there seems to be a really good deposit of, it starts here and it ends here, and it's pretty massive. Then you might bring in your kind of more, your driller, right? Your Vandal driller or whatever the heck, that would come in there and actually just kind of tear it up. I mean, we've seen some concept art where there are other like like stations or these things that have these huge lasers that shoot down into things.
Oh yeah, like a lot of that stuff that's in Squadron 42 right now.
Right.
Like we called them the ticks or whatever, those those big walkers
right. Yeah, those
that had the big giant beam, the big giant beam that shot down into the ground. That's another thing too, is how semi are they willing to go with this? We start mining the planet's surface, we're going to start drilling gigantic holes into it, and then we're done. They're just going to are there going to be giant persistent holes in these planets and moons, or will eventually it be one of those things where they kind of self-heal or self-correct, or they go back to default where the mineral isn't there anymore? Or, and we've seen this as well too, kind of like how we did in Star Wars Galaxies, they have those, you've seen them, those harvesters, those mining, those little drills where you land at those processing plants, where you land at those facilities on those, on the different moons and things. You can see those mining little miners,
you can
bouncing up and down. So are they going to be like the ore harvesters were in
Galaxies,
in Star Wars Galaxies?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that would be a logical choice to do as well.
Yep.
Where you find, say there is a vein of ore, and say you did use the prospector to find it, and so you pinpoint the area, and then you plop one of those harvesters down, and it simulates drilling into the ground and scooping all that resource up, and then when you pull the harvester up, then it just goes back to normal type thing.
Yeah, I mean,
or is it one of those things that'll be, because one of the things they brought up during the land claim stuff, when they were discussing how land claims work, is that you may be sitting on a valuable resource, and they specifically talked about having an ore vein there that people would want. That's why some property would be more valuable than others, and added another gameplay loop to it where basically you had those people buying up all those properties to resell type thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that really kind of gets into a fascinating, could you imagine, you have used your prospector, right, and you've located this thing, and now there are these, obviously there's the difference between more of a permanent type base that you might set up, or a permanent kind of a mining location you could set up maybe with the Pioneer, but there are more temporary ones, just like Galaxies had these, like you said, where you'd offload like this, this harvester, and it would actually begin kind of harvesting, and maybe you would set up your own little comm array, like a mobile comm array that would kind of monitor the space around it, so I mean, people could fly up and blow those things up, you know what I mean? So you may be able to be kind of close by and react, where if you have kind of like your Odyssey or something that's tucked away in a not too far away, you might be able to say, hey, well, my comm array is picking up a ship. I better go down there and check that out. I mean, there's lots of different ways that could go, but the whole concept of maybe flying like a Cutlass Black or something down there and having a couple of those in the back of it and offloading them and setting them up and getting them started. One of my favorite things to do in Galaxies was to kind of maintain my harvester fleet. So, I do hope that there's, some kind of an autonomous device that you can set up that would do that stuff, and, and have it collect, have it, specific things that you're targeting for sure.
Well, another thing they also were talking about with that land claim is that they alluded to those, those resource veins lasted a long time. So how long would they last if you were, you put some sort of mining apparatus on it, or you're using, a bigger mining ship to mine it up? Mostly you would think that there would be some sort of harvester where you could plant those harvesters in those particular areas to be drilling that resource all the time. So you're, constantly collecting it.
But that's a really...
How long would that resource last?
That's a fascinating idea, though, that you're talking about. I mean, if you think about it, right? Because if you think about like an oil rig that's in the ocean, right? They don't just float those over for no reason. There's an enormous pocket of stuff in there.
Those things are there for years,
right?
Drilling that oil up.
That's right. So what a fascinating thing! Like, what happens if you're like, they just opened a new, let's say we've gotten to like 7 systems, and they just opened up the 8th system, and you happen to be like flying around, and you're like, you just kind of were prospecting, and whatever you need to do, whatever the mini game is to kind of have that disc working underneath your prospector, and all of a sudden you do find like 4,700 SCU like of corundum, or like a massive chunk of some something, diamond or aluminum or whatever, you know what I mean? And then you absolutely could set up a temporary autonomous type thing that could be, and just be kind of, that's your operation. I mean, for whatever reason, I know it's not the highest end commodity, but there's an enormous amount of it. So you're really getting like a super huge amount of it. So it is profitable to do in the end of all things, type of thing.
I think those things would have to be procedurally generated as well, where they just kind of appear in different places.
I agree with that.
Which would also lead into the exploration game loop, where people are out searching for valuable materials.
Settling locations.
They scan the planet and go, hey man, we happen to see that there's material X on that planet, and try to sell that information to a mining crew like us,
right?
Or do we are we all constantly out all the time going to different places looking for that rare mineable material? Is that going to be our gameplay loop, so to speak?
And I know they've talked about, it's like, well, we don't want set it, we don't want like set it and forget it type things. But I think that they should think about it in the sense that, okay, it's not set it and forget it because it's a dangerous world. Like in Star Wars Galaxies, nobody could come destroy your harvester fleet. You know what I mean? Like, but I think in Star Citizen, those things should be able to be targeted. I mean, should somebody get a record when they target them? Potentially. You know what I mean?
If they're in UEE space.
Right. Absolutely. And that's the risk versus reward type of thing, right? If you're in more of a controlled system, there might be steeper penalties than if you're, way off in the, on the edge of something. And really, it's going to have to be a very vast universe. And so it does, it's an interesting thing. I mean, there's so many things that you have to get around the corner on, of course, the persistent entity streaming, but eventually server meshing, where you can have lots and lots of people and, but spread out over a vast universe. It's not just Stanton system. There's way more to it than that, way more than just Pyro and Nyx. You know what I mean? But that in and of itself is going to be a fascinating time. Think about that time forward when there is Pyro and Nyx.
Yep.
That's going to be, it's going to really, really be, spread out the player base quite a bit. And in a good way. And I understand there's going to be, there's going to be a limit though, right? There's only, I know they're at 50 now. Let's say they get lucky and they can get to 1,000. Even 1,000 players spread out over Stanton, Pyro, and Nyx. You may not run into each other very much. If you think about it.
Well, even with 50 players on a server with a system as small as Stanton is comparatively to the other systems that are coming.
Right.
You rarely see anybody.
You do. I agree with that 100%. You do.
But if you were going to do it, would you lay it out like this, where you had common, uncommon, super rare, or rare, and then like something like super rare, where the common and uncommon were always, so take Quantanium, for instance, and Quantanium being on Lyria. So we would say that's a common material for Lyria. For other moons, it's not so common. So it's, I guess you would consider it, like on Daymar, it would be considered like uncommon,
right,
to find Quantanium on Daymar. So in that type of classification, where that you can go to specific places to find that material, like we go to Lyria to find Quantanium. We know we can go to the Iron Halo and find Quantanium. It's pretty common there as well. But for other materials, when you're looking for, all these things need a rework and a pass. But
yes,
not to get too far from what I was getting at, is that you take the rare and the super rare and make them transient, where they could pop up anywhere.
I agree. I mean, there definitely needs to be some kind of a randomization where there can be like a high percentage of something, and I'm okay. Like, I really do. I think it's like, some people may not necessarily like that. It's like, well, if I've been there and I've looked, and that's all there is, that's all there should be, and I understand that argument. I'm somebody who thinks it's, just for fun, it would be good every so often to just kind of, have a large percentage of something show up in some place that's, that just gets discovered. You know what I mean? And just like, some guy, like you said, you kind of know, kind of what the routine is, but then all of a sudden there's a massive amount of Bexelite that's been discovered on Pyro 2. For whatever reason. I mean, it is and at the same time, like one system away, there's a huge Bexelite shortage. That's okay. I think that can be really fun gameplay. I think that you can, you'd have your, different types of, I mean, that creates, this floodgate of people kind of doing things. It requires coordinated operations, security, those types of things. Different. You might have literally just a fleet of. Maybe you're not even hauling the stuff. Maybe you're kind of doing a lot of mining, and you've got a lot of expanses, and then you're basically offloading. When you just basically have a place where people can show up and pick up Bexelite, and you're kind of selling it wholesale, but it's such a massive amount of it that you're selling, you know what I mean, that you're doing well, and they're doing well hauling it someplace and taking the risk of hauling it someplace, so you kind of have a shipping company that, that you're working with, or they're working with you. They've contracted you to kind of provide them that material. So yeah, there's a lot of, you're really making a good point. I don't know how I see, like, common, uncommon, that type of thing. I mean, we know how Galaxies did it, there was that, every single thing had its own stats on it. I almost don't know how you don't do something like that, unless they're going to have, like, you use the word classification, or the quality of an item. There's going to have to be something, aluminum, can't always, I don't necessarily know that it can always be aluminum. There's going to have to be, like, either low grade, mid grade, high grade, something.
What purity level is that particular aluminum?
I agree. There's going to have to be some kind of stats on those things in order to differentiate that stuff. I would imagine it's, like, if you're not going to have that, then you're not necessarily going to also have kind of that thing, that magic thing that and I'm not looking for space magic, but I am looking for science to be able to push things, where if you research, kind of something and you get better at it, you know what I mean? Or you just get lucky this one time because this, something kind of crazy happened in the supercloud. I mean, you know, whatever it is, you know, where you've created this one super unique thing that you can blueprint, you know, and become, and like I said, corner the market on some component or something.
You know, even to take, we were talking about the super collider stuff, even to take, you know, you know, that we already know is going into the game, like, you know, tweaking things in the super collider, you know, racing them up, that it would take a rare material or, you know, a rare substance to put into the super collider to overclock these things. Those are the things that we'd need, you know, something rare, something really rare, that we use as the substance to overclock things. That would be, you know, pretty good. Like, you know,
some kind of quantum interlacing or something. Exactly. You know, I know what you're talking about, where there is some kind of, you know, very rare materials that go in and just kind of create this, you know, maybe, like with circuits, things can transfer data at different speeds by the way they're manufactured. You know what I mean? Different things like that, right? Where, you know, and I don't necessarily, you know, how deep in the weeds they want to go, but with the engineering part, you know, maybe like something like a shield generator has like 13 or 12 major components, and each one of those components has things in it that, you know, if you have like the highest grade of every single one for every single thing, and let's say there's 100 different materials, you know what I mean, like that go into that thing, and if you put the highest grade every time, as well as have a good manufacturing processes, you know, then you can get really lucky and get yourself something fantastic. But can you reproduce those in mass? Not unless you have a lot of those materials.
Oh, yeah. We have the, hypothetically, we'd have the Helio Gamma X,
exactly.
Which is a super rare material.
Something. Yeah, you got to have it.
You know, you could only find in certain places. And if they, you know, they've randomized it where it popped up, you know, and say, you know, if you're thinking the way they're going to be in the future, where there's 100 systems, say it popped up this week in, you know, 5 of those 100 systems or 10 of those 100 systems where you would find it. You know, some people might not even come across it.
Well, and that's the thing, right?
Some people may, right? And then those would be those little areas that get contested, say it like popped up in Pyro, so, you know, a place that's going to be, that's going to have a high population. It popped up there and go, oh shit, you know, we got to roll out and get that, you know, try to mine it before everybody else does, or however you know, whatever it is. Maybe it isn't a mineral, maybe it's, you know, it's a gas that you have to.
Well, that's when data becomes so important, right? You and I have talked about, like, when I would, you know, when there would be these resource blooms and galaxies, you know, I would scour the place and find like the 87. It's like, oh, here's the 91% spot, you know what I mean? And build my little circle of stuff around it. And then I'd be like, hey, then I would go around to everybody else and say, hey man, I got an 84 spot of that. I'm willing to tell you where it's at.
Yep. Or you're the Johnny come lately.
You're just trying to get the last of the scraps.
You're just trying to find you were trying to find the highest concentration you could. You're right on the outer edges of everybody else.
Right. You got a 14% spot, and, you know, that's what you get. You know what I mean? Now, you know, Star Citizen does offer the ability to maybe have some kind of a combative intervention. You know, it's like, dude, these guys are on this hot spot. We have got to push them off of that. You know what I mean? If we want to make these... If we let them just kind of mine that stuff, they're going to have better shields than us until another bloom of that pops up.
Yeah, because it goes beyond just monetary, right?
Yes.
It goes into the, you know, those guys are going to be better equipped than we will be.
It needs to go beyond AUEC or UEC. It needs to get into the power game. You know, like that is a... that is a power shifting material, and that's when you could have like this, some organizations rolling, right? They're just way ahead of another organization, and you've got let's say we're at 47 systems, all of a sudden in system 43, this little organization finds, this super rare resource, and somehow or another they just keep it quiet. And they mine the crap out of that stuff, and then all of a sudden you're facing their ships, and you're like, dude, these guys are two-shotting me. How is this possible? And you begin kind of researching, kind of doing some espionage, and you figure out, oh no, they found some crazy something or another and have designed these insane lasers. You know what I mean? And maybe there was only a finite amount of that stuff. And so if you finally do destroy enough of their ships or whatever, you'll, or you figure out a way to kind of, sneak attack and blow up some of those ships or whatever to kind of knock them out, type of thing. But yeah, I mean, and I know a lot of this is kind of just theory crafting, right? Which is, our specialty.
It's what we like to do.
It's what we like to do. It's exactly right. But I think that these are important conversations, because I do think that this could be, some way that eventually the PU could go, and I really hope it does. I hope it doesn't. What is the word, homogenous? I hope it doesn't really kind of be just really kind of milk toast or vanilla, or here's your 20 resources, and there's only one grade, and everybody builds the exact same stuff. I know that it's very important to me that there's obviously that there's different types of materials, different classifications. You use a great word for like that type of thing, and that it actually equates into the components get better. Maybe there's some rocks, maybe there's some materials you can't mine until you can build the mining lasers that can mine them.
Tweak them to such a degree that you'll be able to mine that material. Not your basic lancet isn't going to be able to break through, or even
or maybe
something like an impact, or
or you can just collect, just like after hours of mining, you can get like one SCU of that stuff, but that one SCU of that stuff allows you to create a mining laser head that can actually get through it. You know what I mean? That type of thing. That would be awesome.
Like with other games, like other survival games and things like that, a lot of these alpha tribes, they know where, certain material spawns, and what do? They lock down those areas so no one else can get to. So if you keep the really important materials randomized, where it can pop up anywhere, where, no one can, build a base around, said material, then, that gives everybody the, same chance to get a hold of it. And if you, keep it popping up, in different places, and say that one material like the Helios Gamma X pops up, for that one particular week or a couple of days, make it really finite, make the time period really finite, where it isn't there anymore.
Right.
After a couple of days, then I believe, people are like, well, then not everybody can get a hold of it. Well,
that's okay.
That's the way shit goes, man. Right? So,
I agree with that 100%.
It will pop up again, right, somewhere else, and that also, like we just spoke about a minute ago, it leads into that exploration gameplay. People, constantly looking for these rare materials, always on the look. I mean, that's their whole mission is, if you're wanting to be an explorer and you're wanting to do that explorer gameplay, that's the explorer gameplay. Constantly searching out for that stuff, and to keep it randomized all the time, where it pops up in different places and different things can pop up, and all these, it keeps it fresh and it keeps it new. It keeps it new for these people, and it keeps people, gives them purpose, gives them something to be looking for. Instead of go, yeah, I've seen that shit before.
Well, exactly. And here's the thing. Like, let's say you're out with your, you're out there with your prospector, right? And you do happen to just find something. You're like, wow, this seems like a pretty big concentration of this stuff. And then you move in and like you use something Like, you've collected the data. You know the location of this massive spawn of stuff. You know that it's of very good quality. You know how much is there. You've done whatever the mechanic loop is, whatever the loop is for you to gather as much information. But the most critical piece of information that you're going to have about that stuff is its location, a coordinate. And then that coordinate you're going to have to put on like your MSR or your Herald, or it's going to have to be stored in a data bank somewhere. You know, and you've got to move that data. And if you start kind of shopping it around, people may know that you have, it's like, this guy's on one of these guys, this guy's got he's got a coordinate on a computer we've got to get our hands on. There's a whole espionage side to that. I mean, that's where the data or the information becomes, you know, very valuable as well. Like you were talking about exploration gameplay, or, you know, or being able to kind of deal in, you know, the, like how, you know, like if it's really like a galaxy changing power shift amount of something, you know, how critical that becomes. You know what I mean? You know, to being able to kind of, it's kind of like when Princess Leia is being chased, you know, for the plans or whatever to the Death Star, you know, that type of thing. It's, you know, it's amazing.
Well, you know, bringing, you know, the Herald or the, you know, the Merc in there, the Mercury, where they can, you know, eavesdrop on that information. Because think of it this way: if you had something that was, you know, material that you needed to be a game changer for small org, for instance, you know, what would you pay for that? Would it be one of those situations like, hey, we found this really rare material, and you know, who's going to be the highest bidder for it, or, you know.
Well, and also
there's a lot of implications for that as well, you know.
You know, and you talk about like these people that okay, they're making better shields than you. I think that blueprint should be on one of their systems somewhere, where you can espionage that. It's got to be stored on one of their systems somewhere. You know, and you know, it can't necessarily be, you know, just on some ship that's just stored. You know what I mean, type of thing. Like, you know, like maybe the data just exists on all of the org computers. You know what I mean? That are, you know, anything that can hold data, you know, could potentially be hacked to get that information. I mean, there's a lot of stuff they could do along those lines that would be amazing.
Which is actually really cool.
Yes, I mean, you know, that's what I'm saying. So, you know, like, you know, so somebody has found like some kind of a resource bloom of Helios, you know, XO3947, and they've made these, you know, incredible shields or whatever. But, you know, but somewhere, like every time your org is online, you know, it's like, you know, you've got to, you know, there is certain data that is, you know, it's available. You know what I mean? And so your ships can be, if your ships are disabled and boarded, you know, potentially that stuff could be downloaded and somebody else can get the blueprint. You know, that type of thing. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go with that, but data can become just as important, you know, as, you know, in a way. I'm actually surprised they don't do, I mean, I know right now in the PU they don't do it, but they should have, like, like, it would be kind of cool if you just downloaded this data from like Arc L1, and then you just took it over to CRUL1, and that, you know, you got paid 11,000 AUEC or something, you know, and as long as, and there's like a download time and there's an upload time, you know what I mean, type of thing. So there's a little bit of a situation, you know, like, you have to spend some time downloading and uploading, and maybe there's, you know, other people while you're downloading and uploading can potentially hack that data. You know, during the download link and the upload link, if people are scanning for those, they might be able to try and intercept it with a mini game. You know,
well, one of the things I guess you could do in that situation where you could sell, you know, a lot of games they do it, but it's just kind of like you're selling it, you know, to the NPCs, but basically where you're selling the Explorer information.
Right.
What if there was like an Explorer board? Sort of like, you know, so like a message board for that information, and they put it up there kind of like an auction house or something, right? Where they put it up for, say, I'm going to sell this information
right.
on this auction site for, say, let's just say 300K. And so you're going through it and go, let's see where all this information is, because, say we're just like a small mining ord and we're looking around for new planets that have, let's just say something like Quantanium,
sure.
New planets with Quantanium, or new planets with, whatever materials that, come down the pipe. And so that's all we're looking for. But then we see this one post that says, rare material in, beta epsilon 5, selling for 300K. And we go, ooh, what's this? And we buy it, and, it's this rare material. And so we're like hauling butt out there. But, unbeknownst to us, the Herald or, some of these other, hackers have been hacking those streams, hacking those comm arrays. And so they know it too. And they're selling it on the black market, so to speak. And so we're, we're in a race for time to get out there first, So, those, like a pirate org, may beat us out there because somebody hacked the data. Something like that.
Oh, I agree with that. I mean, we really are kind of drifting into the places where I would like to see it go someday, and I know that, like I said, a lot of this is just kind of pie in the sky, but, I love kind of discussing the possibilities like that. And I think other people do too. I think it's one of those things where you really do want to give yourself the opportunity to imagine. I think that's how we got here with Star Citizen, is somebody gave themselves the opportunity to imagine. So, why stop?
That's what we bought into. That was the idea that we bought into, is the immense possibilities. Because those are the type of things that we like, is, infinite possibilities.
I agree with that 100%.
That, this is a big sandbox game, and, you can go anywhere with it, and with the fidelity and, the the real down and dirty sim quality to it is, how far do you want to go with it?
Wow.
That's the speculations. That's what turns our gears, right? So
I think
but
so.
kind of steer it back onto the road, kind of relate it back to the merchantman. Are these things that we've been talking about, are these the things that you would want to sell in your merchantman? Is that what your space mall is going to carry? Is, these things that we've talked about?
Yeah, potential data points, or there's all sorts of different things. You know what I mean? And certainly you could. It's really easy to understand that some things are going to be more available in some areas, and some things are going to be not available in others. There may be systems that do not allow zero small arms. So maybe, the band who just kind of sneaks in and opens up shop.
Smuggling arm smuggling.
Yeah, you know what I mean? That type of thing. Now, that's an awful big arm smuggler, I suppose, but maybe it just kind of sets up shop in the system next to it.
It's kind of that wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, we got some Geminis over here you might be interested in.
Exactly. So it's just like, people are going to kind of hit a jump gate in their smuggling ship, come over and pick up those rail guns, and then kind of, and kind of risk it, but the BMM is kind of sitting out there on the outside of the bubble where it's not allowed, but it's definitely a lot closer than maybe traveling 4 systems to pick those things up, and so
that's where ships like the Star Runner and the Connie Taurus and things like that have that non-scannable, cargo areas where you put your crate of guns or, whatever your contraband is in those little zones, and you go through all the scan zones, through the jump points, and then jump back in, and I mean, that type of thing.
We've spoken about modularity, but wouldn't it be cool if almost any ship could have have a kind of an unscannable cargo hold, but it just reduced your cargo space significantly because it's so shielded and insulated.
Yeah, a little, a module of that becomes your smuggler hold.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have a 23, like a 20 SCU thing that goes on a Cutlass Black instead of 46 SCU. But if you scan the Cutlass Black, it doesn't look like there's anything on there. But actually, inside that cargo hold, there's another big cargo hold, but it's a shielded box that just can't be, you just can't see what's in it. You know what I mean, type of thing. So, are you going to pull over that Cutlass Black and board it?
Board it and look for the secret hidey hole.
Exactly. I mean, if it's called the Gun Runner, maybe, but that type of thing, so very interesting, thoughts on that for sure.
All right, for one more bit of Alien Wing, so I know we kind of hit upon a little bit.
Yeah, one of the things I will mention I was hoping to do, and you can, we don't have to do this, but if you have a different idea, but I thought it would be fun to at least kind of do there's no lightning rounds here between you and I, but I thought it might be fun to kind of go through the different alien ships and just have you flown it, what's your impressions of it, you know what I mean? And obviously we can speak a little bit about, who, what race it was kind of attributed to. I thought it'd be fun to just kind of, because there's only a handful of them, you know what I mean? It's not like it's a huge list of them, but what do you think about that?
Shoot, let's do it.
All right, so lightning round here, right? So let's talk about. We're gonna start out here, and it's gonna be. Give me just a second here. We're gonna start out with a couple of ships here that I think are going to be very interesting. And give me just a sec as I pull up the list. And I wanted to start with and help me with the pronunciation of this ship manufacturer. Is it Apoa?
Apua?
Yep.
The Xi'an? Yeah.
So let's start with the Cartual. And I'll tell you kind of very briefly, I've never flown the Cartual. I've heard that it's incredibly nimble. And I have heard that it's pretty easy to pick some of those wings off of it that can actually reduce its capability and firepower. But I've also heard in the right hands, it's kind of like an arrow, can be quite deadly.
I haven't flown it either. The design is really interesting. It's definitely very alien. It's cool. I mean, I like it. It's got a cool color to it. Well, at least the color that, they have with that red. I really like that red. Big fan of that.
Kind of the maroonish type red, yep.
Yeah. And really dig, the Xi'an tech with the anti-grav and, with the way things kind of fold and unfold. Really dig it. Haven't flown it. But yeah, I too have, seen how, it is completely nimble and in the right hands, pretty deadly.
Now, one of the things I will say about it, just because I like ships that kind of take on that B-wing type, like I really like the Misk, like the San and, those, I like those ships, the Mako. I do like those ships that kind of, and it's kind of got that long, like the, where it's not necessarily orientated on the horizon, it's vertical. So I do like that about the ship as well.
Well, I mean, I do like, that design. I don't know, when we're going into the other Xi'an ships that, where, they stand up, they're more stand up than, your basic ship design, not all ships are aerodynamic, but...
and the Xi'an capitals, or the bigger ships, I think are more that B-wing design, right? They're verticals.
Yep. They're that vertical, they...
So it almost reminds me of Homeworld. I don't know if you ever played that game, Homeworld. They had some big vertical ships like that, and I think Eve has some too like that.
The vertical ships like that?
Yeah.
Oh, Eve. Yeah, Eve does.
Yes.
Yeah. Eve does. Yeah, most definitely. Um,
Anyways, I
I
like
think
that. I like that design for sure. I just think it's cool. So obviously trying to stick to somewhat to a lightning round here. What do you think of the Sandtalk guy, the medium guy from those guys?
still, it's still in that design, right? It's a vertical design. Um, you know, we haven't seen it yet, so I'm not sure.
It also kind of looks like it has kind of that. It'll be interesting to see because it looks like it's very it's just got very spidery arms. That it doesn't look like it's real thick, thick metal that keeps all those things attached. All those engines attached, and I would imagine that that's a big part of its that's its spaceflight characteristics are that. Of course, it does have 4 size 3 weapons, which I think that's actually going to be fairly effective. That's not a bad design. It does, I don't know. I do like that one. I think they're cool looking ships. Nothing crazy, but
No, I really do dig it. With the way, and that's another thing with like the Cartual. That I didn't hit upon is, it really does kind of give you that sunburst look. We were thinking about it. Kind of reminds me of kind of like Nova ships from Guardians of the Galaxy in a way.
Yes, absolutely. And I do like in both those ships, it looks like they have an incredible viewing capability. I mean, the Cartual's got that kind of that donut glass, canopy type thing, and it does look like it really does look like the Sandtalk Yai's got that as well, and so it
gives
does
you that great field of view. That's
exactly
one of the things, kind of like being in the Prospector. You have that big old bubble canopy and the big old bubble windshield, and you get that awesome field of view. That's what I really dig about it. I'd say, that's probably what I would like about these ships as well, is, having that great, being able to look out your cockpit and being able to see, all around you.
Yeah, and I myself, and I don't know if you do, so I don't have any eye tracking or whatever, but it is something I'm going to invest in at some point, and something like the process, when you have that big field of, I agree, it makes it, it's a different feeling flying those types of ships. It's amazing, even like in the MSR, even having that little hole at the bottom of your feet when you're flying, how much that actually plays a role versus something like a freelancer that's got kind of the mail slot, you know what I mean, type of thing.
Especially when you're trying to land it and you don't go to third person.
Right.
That's one of the things I really dig about the Star Runner is that, I can look, down, under the dash and be able to see the landing pad.
I agree 100%. Like I literally just picked up an MSR this week. I'd never flown it before, and I found that feature incredibly handy to be able to look down at my feet, and not necessarily. I didn't feel like I needed to go into third person as much when I went to land it. You know what I mean? Because I felt like I could definitely get a sense of. And the one thing I did like about that, it does land smooth. I mean, it, the Herc. The Hercules, the M2, the C2. I'm getting better at sticking the landings on those things, but they do. I still get a little bit of that roll forward, sometimes. But man, that MSR, boo, she hits the pad and she's stuck.
Not as bad as the Connie, but
yes, not as bad as the Connie. Now I've actually gotten used to the Taurus, though. I've flown that so much that I can actually put that on its back pads, and a lot of times. Like I'd never, there are times, of course, when I do get that nose dip down, but I very rarely now get that nose dip down to the front. But when I first started flying that thing, it's like, oh boy, I'm going to be cracking the canopy on this thing. So, Cool. Well,
I'd be very interested in the Santokyo Eye.
yeah.
It's kind of a play on like Santokyo, like Tokyo.
Yes, I love them.
Santokyo.
I think you and I were talking about that. Like, there seems to be, it is interesting how some of the one alien race has more of a Japanese, and I mean that in a really respectful way. Because it's super super cool culture stuff. That type of thing. But then there's the Xi'an have more of like more of a Chinese type.
Definitely Asian inspired.
Definitely Asian inspired, you know what I mean, and different facets of Asian inspired, which is really wonderful.
It is really cool.
Really wonderful. So, one of the cool obviously the other two are that kind of rounded out for APOA is those the racing bikes, and we don't need to speak a ton about those. I don't have a lot of experience on the Noxes. How about you?
No, I got one this week, but haven't ridden it. So that was the next thing I was going to do, is go out there. From what I understand, they're kind of like a drag car. They're great in a straight line, but are not very maneuverable in the turns.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. They look like that's how they are. They look like they're really kind of built for straight lines. They don't seem to have a lot of. There doesn't seem to be a lot of atmospheric assistance, aerodynamic assistance to turn in those things.
But I think they're really cool, especially where you get down in that cafe racing style, and you have that little bit of that of the back that kind of comes up over your head a little bit, so it kind of shields you a little bit. What it puts me in the mind of is Akira.
Oh,
if you're into anime.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's what it puts me in the mind of, is the bike from Akira, which I always thought that was like cool, very cool.
You can't lose with that. No, there's definitely some anime that I really do like, and Akira's one of them, and a lot of Ghost in the Machine, older stuff like that. Ghost in the Shell, is it? It's been a long time, that type of stuff. Love that stuff. But I guess, I mean, this, in the most respectful sense, is Cowboy Bebop considered anime? Cowboy Bebop, I love
anime staple.
Sure, I mean, and the thing is I'm not into anime enough to, to say that's anime or that's not necessarily considered anime, but those are some things that I enjoyed or whatever, and certainly no expert on it, but there's a lot of awesome sci-fi there, you know what I mean, and so I've definitely dabbled in some of those things. So
as it relates to the Xi'an, I like the aesthetic. I like the where they're going with it, where with the Xi'an's anti-grav tech and all that, makes them super nimble, kind of the glass cannon, get the heck out of the way real quick. It's poke, 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 move, poke, 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 move. That's how they're kind of designed in my mind.
I don't disagree with that, and it was interesting. I think you and I were talking a little earlier about the Devarin having kind of that Bushido. How that's mentioned as kind of, they're like kind of a warrior culture who've been defeated twice by the humans in open war.
Barely defeated the second time around. Barely defeated.
Yeah, but an interesting end as well. How they kind of, just kind of sacrifice themselves just to get to their home world. You know what I mean? There's something I think the thing that I read said something about. That there was, as you can imagine, if people are trying to retake their homeworld, there was maybe some human people that were, some humans could identify with that. You know what I mean? But nevertheless, they kind of lost at the end, and then kind of, kind of maybe almost like a ritual sacrifice type thing as they got into the atmosphere and just kind of crashed down into their homeworld.
It's
fairly romantic and interesting.
It is, and I definitely, the Devarin's definitely that race that I definitely have a fondness for. And the more that, I get into, what we know about, say, like the Xi'an and things like that, I know a lot of this lore is still in flux, and, they're still kind of fleshing it out and kind of solidifying where it's going to go. But, I feel like they're doing a decent job so far. Even to the degree of, we're not really sure. We know they look turtle-like, and then they even brought up is whether they're going to add a shell to them or not. I think if you just leave the shell off of them, I think it'd be okay.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be that Earth-like. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be that Earth-like, but whatever the decision is, I'm sure it will be done tastefully. I mean, certainly, there's not much concept art. There's not very many things I look at Star Citizen and thinking to myself, that's terrible. I mean, there really isn't. They do a really good job. You know what I mean? They seem to have whoever's picking that stuff at the top, 2 thumbs up. You're doing great.
If it's CR, he has good taste for ships.
He does. So. Well, speaking of good taste for ships, let's move on to the Asperia, ships. And Asperia to me is an interesting ship manufacturer in the sense that they have these they've borrowed out of other cultures kind of famous ships or whatever, and they were kind of their reproductions. And so right off the bat, let's go with just the Talon, just the straight, not the bomber variant, just the straight Talon. And the one thing I want to say is, having flown the Talon now because they gave it to me, maybe not. Haven't seen a cooler animation than
with their windshield.
Yes,
the windshield. Yeah,
that's got to be one of the cool. Of course, the way that the fact that it's bird-like and the paint job. But the other thing I just want to say about the Talon is watching people who are really good at combat, like the Dark Law, or someone like that who's just really good. I think there's this video of this collage of him just eating people with the Talon when it first came out. Mm-hmm. I mean, just feasting on other, pilots. It's a very, very capable craft.
Oh, I like it. It flies so well. It really does. I dig it. The aesthetic looks cool. I know it has some shortcomings. Those pieces on the wings get blown off real easy. Mm-hmm. We spoke a little bit about how the Cartual is kind of a glass cannon. I would say even more so than that one, this one is kind of that glass cannon. It is hit and move. It is definitely a hit and move type ship.
I agree with that. I think that one's definitely about speed and positioning. And it can outturn things, so that's what it does. And there's also this. It's an interesting thing, and maybe we'll have to talk about this in more detail some other time, because I don't know that we have necessarily time tonight. But I will say that I do think that there's an argument to be made for ships how they behave in atmosphere versus ships how they behave in space. You know what I mean? I could really imagine that there may be some designs that just are not that good at space. They're not good space combat ships, but they're really good in atmosphere. And vice versa. There's some ships that are, just the opposite of that. So the Talon seems like it absolutely behaves pretty good in atmosphere. I found
it flies really well in atmosphere, and maybe that's kind of where they're pushing a lot of this, right? Especially with with these bounty missions that are in atmosphere right now. That that's kind of becoming a good thing, or a big thing, where you're kind of taking a ship that's a better all-rounder that actually flies really good in atmo. Very capable in atmosphere, flies really well in space. Would you, as it relates to like PvP, are we seeing more PvP happening, in atmosphere? a lot of these things that have been, they haven't gone to atmosphere yet. Seems like they've been keeping to space, but say you had a ship that definitely behaved better in atmosphere and you were being attacked, would you head for the deck where you fly down in atmosphere where you knew you had a better, an advantage over, somebody that ship doesn't fly that well in atmo?
And I definitely think, like guys like Avenger 1, they definitely know that, the character, they understand those flight characteristics and they know how to abuse them. And, and when I say abuse, I don't mean in a bad way. I mean, they just know how those ships are going to behave and whether or not it's to their advantage to be...
Yeah, use the advantage.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Which is exactly what you should be doing, And so, moving on, of course, then you have the Shrike, which, I know, definitely isn't something that, that probably gets nearly as much love as the regular Talon. I tend to think that on a ship that size, 24 size 2 missiles is actually a fairly exceptional capacity. I mean, it's a missile boat.
Yeah, that's all it is a missile boat. When I guess its basics come online, where you use it the way it was designed, where you're further out in distance. I know where they're going to do the combat refactor and all that kind of stuff, where you can actually fire your missiles from a safer position, because that's what that thing was designed to do, was be further out and spray its target with as many independent missiles as possible.
I mean, you're almost hoping to exhaust somebody's countermeasures and that, what I mean, type of thing. And so, potentially, try and drain them of their countermeasures. You're either taking a one missile hit or you got to fire a countermeasure. But eventually that thing's got more missiles than you have countermeasures. So, I mean, that's, whether or not you have time in that type of combat environment. But, you think about, well, what happens when you have, you have, 2 Talons and 2 Shrikes. That becomes quite, they're dealing with, that's a lot of missiles that it's going to be fired at you.
Well, when they, when all that kind of comes about, countermeasures are not going to be as effective as they are now,
right?
Where they absolutely, they counter missiles. You almost don't even want to fire them because people are just going to use a countermeasure.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why they're not very useful now.
You just kind of have a one button get out of getting hit by a missile card free, right?
So a lot of that's going to change, where missiles are going to be a little bit more devastating. That's when this, the Shrike was going to probably shine a little bit.
So moving on, yes, exactly. I think you're right with that. I will tell you, I'm fond of the Prowler. I am. I like the Prowler. I know it's not everybody's favorite ship. I like the way that it offloads people. Mm-hmm. I like the fact that it's got, and I think it's interesting that it's got an upper and a lower cockpit. I just like the ship. I know I hear a lot, especially from our own internal operations teams, that it's brittle. That it's mm-hmm. That it's not as durable as, and I don't have a whole, but I think the Prowler is going to be one of those things where you have to think that when that stealth technology comes into play, somehow that thing is designed to take a real big advantage of that. So you've got a stealth dropship. I hope that that's kind of what's happening with it. I don't necessarily know. But I flew the Prowler the other day, and I just like it. I mean, I'm not going to lie.
Aesthetically, I really do. I like it a lot. I flew it. It flies decent.
It flies decent. I agree with that.
I mean, it's really cool for its purpose. Like you said, when the stealth capabilities come back into play, it's really going to be, for that design. And all it does is just drop people off the side. It's it's kind of a no nonsense dropship. There's nothing else to it. We was talking the other day about it, and I started thinking. I go, as ships go, I mean, I like it. It's cool and it looks cool, but would I use it over, your favorite ship ever, the Valkyrie?
Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly care for the Valkyrie for a couple of. I mean, we've just gotten Marines killed in it a few times, and one time was my fault. So truly, my 100% bad decision making on my part. But the Valkyrie seems squished. I mean, I don't know how the Prowler would have behaved in those situations. It probably doesn't matter. Now that I've actually been in the 890 and I know what that rocket turret is capable of. You know what I mean? I don't necessarily know. If you get in the range of that thing, it's going to light you up. So I'm sure the Prowler wouldn't have done any better. But yeah, I mean, it's.
Let's say that versus the Valkyrie with more cargo space, door guns.
Yeah, the Valkyrie's more versatile for sure. I think that. Yeah. I mean, the Prowler to me is a stealth dropship. The Valkyrie to me is more of a. I don't know that it hasn't proven to me yet that it's a hot drop ship. Mm-hmm. I think that's how some people view it. I don't necessarily view it that way.
Also, keep in mind when armor comes online, that's going to play a big factor.
That's what I'm waiting for, right? The Valkyrie seems a bit squishy to me. And it's only because, in the times that we've used it a little bit, it's been kind of blown out from underneath us with the loss of Marines fairly quickly.
To round it out, I mean, I like the Prowler, but it's very specific in its purpose.
Yep,
and,
absolutely.
A lot of the times now, we kind of when we're purchasing a ship, we're looking at more of the versatility factor. Can this ship do this and can it do that? Because usually we don't buy ships that are, very specific to purpose. And the Prowler is very specific to purpose.
Yes, I think you're right. I think we're I definitely agree with that. I mean, I'm far more likely myself, honestly, to buy a Pisces than, say, a Mustang.
The Pisces Mustang looks cooler, but the Pisces is more versatile.
Yep, I mean, especially the Expedition that's got the 4 guns on it. It's got it can't combat as well, but it can do other things as well. Besides just combat. So that's one of those things, and you're very right. The Prowler's very specific. So, kind of moving on, you have kind of the Glaive, kind of a medium fighter. And an interesting one, the Glaive and the Scythe are very similar, in some capacity.
Oh, well, they are. The design, well, they're both
Vandal.
Well, the Scythe is Vandal, and the Glaive is a human interpretation of a Vandal ship.
Right.
I don't like it.
Yeah, and I don't, I will be honest, I think it's cool in the sense that it's different, but I'm not a big fan of it either. I mean, but I do think that it's fun that I honestly think that they've done a good job making something radically different than anything else you're seeing. And I do like the fact that between the Glaive, the Blade, and the Scythe, that there are these, we talk about design characteristics or, design aesthetic or, that type of thing. It is carried throughout those Vandal ships. Very good.
Well, it definitely does pull it off. It gives it that very aggressive alien feel to it. It is definitely you can look at it and tell that the race that designed that is very aggressive.
Yeah, they're looking. I mean, intimidation is something they're looking to. It is definitely they're very aggressive, And so the blade being the kind of the light version of that as well. I think it seems like I caught on some show today that the blade is getting at least its projectiles are being sped up from 700 meters a second to 1400 meters a second. I don't know if it's actually like if the actual damage is going up, but how fast the bullet's travel is going up, which is of course going to make it more accurate out to distances a little bit.
Well, one of the things with these ships is that you can't change the weapons on them.
Oh,
they're fixed weapons.
That's a good point.
Which you're kind of stuck with what it has. And the cannons that come on these ships are really slow firing, and they're really poor for PvP. That's another thing too. These Vandal ships, and these Asperion ships with the glaive and things like that, they're going to have another pass. They're going to get their gold standard pass, and they're going to probably balance these guys a little bit more and make them better than they are. I guess the Vandal aesthetic is to make a really light, portable fighter and cram the biggest guns as you can on it. I think that's their thing. So, but as the glaive goes, and just to put the actual Vandal ship, the Scythe in there, I think they fly pretty crappy in atmosphere. I've had slight arguments about that, but I don't like the way they fly in Atmo. I don't like the way they fly, period. They're just, for me, they're just not my cup of tea.
Well, I mean, it is interesting that they're alien because they definitely feel foreign to me when I fly them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I agree. I feel kind of, yeah. I mean, I think I'll just leave it at that. They are a touch foreign to me, and so let's move on to a ship that I have actually grown quite fond of, and that is the Banu Defender.
I think everybody. I bought that ship a long time ago, and I thought it looked unique, and it was never one of those things. Even when it was in concept, I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's okay, it's cool. It definitely looks alien." But once I bought it, man, dude, I'm with you there. It's as soon as you fly it, you'll dig it. You'll like that ship. It's it's a little slow in some of the pitching up and in the turns. Just a hair bit slow, but it's very controllable. You can anticipate the ship's movements really, really well. I mean, it definitely telegraphs really well, and you can put some pretty big guns on it. And that it comes with a size 2 shield.
Here's the
pretty awesome.
Yes, and here's the thing. I couldn't agree more. That shield is a game changer on that thing. The other thing that's a game changer on that thing is the size of its gas tanks. And when Pyro comes online, I honestly think the Defender is going to become one of the more premier fighters in the sense that it can travel distances that other fighters can't. So
it can. If you put a more, one of the things that people don't realize is that you can put super fast jump drive in that thing. You can put the VK00 in it and have plenty of fuel to fly anywhere in Stanton that you want to go.
Yes.
That's what makes that thing very unique. And you're right. If you put a more efficient jump drive in that thing, you can definitely fly it straight to Pyro.
I truly believe, like with an efficient quantum drive on that thing, you're going to have, you may face an organization that's making the decision. Are they going like using the Liberator as kind of a pocket carrier, and that's kind of the logistics of kind of unpacking those ships and that type of thing. I think the Defender may actually have a place where it may not necessarily be as combat effective, but because of its range and because of the fact that it can kind of, the distance it can cover, it may actually find its way kind of, in a much higher status. Now we'll see, but I mean, both those wings got to be gas tanks. That's all I have to say, because that thing's got fuel capacity for days.
I could see that becoming a fighter escort role, taking on that fighter escort role.
Yeah,
where it can fly. It can fly with the fleet, and doesn't need to be refueled as often as something like a Gladius or an Arrow.
Right.
Something that has real small tanks.
I mean, it's got significantly bigger tanks than those ships. I mean, it's not even close. It's not in the ballpark.
Dude, when I tell people to go ahead and put that VK00 on it, and they're like, what? I was like, yeah. You can fly from ArcCorp to Microtech and back to ArcCorp and still have a lot of fuel left over with that drive. People, they're gobsmacked. They're like, wow. Yeah, it's a pretty awesome ship. It's definitely up there in my top favorite ships.
Definitely a winner. All right, moving on to probably the one that's got me the most interested in alien ships, and that's the Raylan. Right now, everybody kind of who listens to my, my Quantanium and Coffee stream, or, who kind of asks me if, what's your favorite Quantanium hauler? It's the Taurus, right? The Taurus is just one of those ships. It's got big guns. It's got a nice complement of missiles and 174 SCU. It's a gunship that's got a big, so here comes the Raylan, right? It's going to have, not as much of the forward-facing power, but it's going to have, lots of turrets, 4 size 2s. It's going to have a lot of missiles. It's going to have a couple of utility things, but it's a 320 SCU cargo hold. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, I don't know if it's going to unseat the Taurus in my mind, but it is the one alien ship that, it's the one that's probably had me the closest to reach into my wallet. I haven't pulled the trigger on it now, but I do think that it's an interesting ship. And the last thing I want to say about it before I hand it over to you is, if for some reason that external cargo thing becomes an issue, where for timing reasons it is just faster for external cargo, it is a ship that's got more teeth than, say, your bigger hull series ships. So, I don't know. I think the Raylan's an interesting ship for sure.
And it being that Geon, wow. Sometimes I can twist your mouth up a little bit. That Geon tech with, you would think that it would be extremely maneuverable as well to be a hauler.
I mean, and the one thing I will say is, if you look at a lot of the, I would encourage everybody to, if you go to the Robert Space Industry site, look at the Holo viewer, because it's very difficult to understand how hive-like that back end is with all those cargo containers. So it is a blockade runner. Like, you've got your kind of front smash, and then your cargo behind. So, an interesting ship. You're absolutely right. I mean, there's huge engines on that thing, and with and then some good sized turrets. It'll be interesting to see. It will be interesting to see how that one comes out. But that's the one that's got my got my eye on it. I've got my eye on that one the most. And so,
it's cool. It definitely is, and just as it relates to cargo capacity. It's, it hauls more than the Taurus, and, just slight of, just a little less than, say, the M2, but, probably going to be faster, more maneuverable. definitely got, with it being more maneuverable, you might be able to fight your way out of a sticky situation.
It's going to be
Unlike,
interesting, for
a
sure.
big cargo hauler like a Hercules or something without a crew.
And it does have, 2 large shield generators. That's good.
It may be able to, take a licking, and get out of dodge. One of those things where if you're being attacked, you can cut and run pretty easy with it, or at least fight your way out of a situation. So yeah, I'm interested in seeing how that one goes. I like the idea of having, just over 300 SCU of cargo, and it looks pretty self-contained. So it may not be a really big ship, but hauls a lot.
Yeah, and
I'm curious about it.
And it does say the fuel intake and it's got 2 medium. It's going to be interesting to see. If there's anything else that kind of stands out about it. You know what I mean? We'll have to see. But like I said, I think it's. The other thing for me is I bought the Taurus at 150. It's worth 190 now. So it's. And that ship it's 225. So I actually could be kind of, getting, I could pick it up for almost like 185, right? Like a 40, like I've earned, like the Taurus has earned $40 a credit. You know what I mean? So, it's one of those. That's the other reason I got my eye on it too. So we'll have to see. I mean, I just like the ship.
No, it's cool, but it definitely has that alien tax to it. 225 for that thing. So
what is the next? I guess it's a good question. I mean, what is the next hull? So you have the hull A that hauls 64. What is the hull B hull? I'm gonna go look at that. I'm kind of curious. I guess I've never really thought about that before, like looking at the MISC ships really quickly. And we don't do this a whole lot where we're kind of pulling up ships too much, but I'm going to take a look at the hull B and see how much that hauls. I don't know what the cost is on the hull B either right now. But see if I can get a spec on that.
Yeah, the hull B. 384. 384, and let's see if there's a...
So,
yeah, we didn't have a price yet. Still in concept, but yeah. It hauls as much as almost as much as that the Xi'an, the Raylan.
Oh, it hauls more than a Raylan. I think the Raylan's 320.
What is it? What's the Raylan haul right now?
320, I think is what.
320. Yeah. So, I had it flipped around, but yeah, that's what I meant. Actually,
yeah, no
it just hauls a little bit more than the Raylan.
Yeah, it does.
And can't remember what the price on the hull A was.
It was I think it's 90 or something like that.
Was it 90?
Yeah.
No, was it? I thought it was like 130 or it wasn't worth what its price was. Because it only hauls 64 SCU.
Right.
And it definitely wasn't worth the price point. At least that's the way I remember it. I don't know. You guys, may correct us.
Yeah. Well, and feel free to.
I can't remember, man. I got too much things rattling around up there, dude. So.
Oh, that's totally fine. So, yeah. So I thought it was fun. I mean, we don't talk about alien ships that much because there, quite honestly, just isn't a whole lot of industrial ships that are. And that's kind of our wheelhouse, right? Industrial stuff and mining ships and that type of thing. And so we don't, I just thought it would be fun to kind of chat alien stuff. And we are at the tail end of Alien Week and with the BMM controversy. So, I think this was kind of, we covered all the bases that I wanted to cover. So I do want to say, if you're still happen to be listening, thank you so much out there. I really enjoyed our conversation tonight, Zoe.
It was it was something we didn't, we don't get into all that much. But real quick, what do you think about a Xi'an mining ship?
Oh well, yeah, that's. I really would like to see it. Yeah, absolutely. That if there's going to be any mining ship, I would want it to be Xi'an for sure. And
Yeah, it would definitely be cool, I think. And we talked a little bit about the differences that say maybe some Xi'an tech would be over human tech, and yeah, it'd be kind of cool to see a little bit. So.
Yeah, like I know some of the races are considered kind of more advanced than humans, and some of them are less advanced than humans. The Xi'an are considered more advanced than the humans in Star Citizen, right?
By about 150 years,
right?
About 150, 200 years, somewhere in there.
So yeah, so that's very interesting to me, right? And that's what we talked about, like civilization level 1, civilization level 2. How would they approach that? It's a very fascinating thing because it's not always going to be lasers and blowing stuff up. It's not going to be combustion. It's not. They're definitely going to have something else that they do. We talked about, some of sound tech or some other technology that kind of, that just kind of makes the material kind of distills the material down out of something, out of the larger rock. So, I don't know what they would do, but I really am excited about alien mining, some kind of an alien miner at some point.
Well, I believe, it'd be really neat to see it fleshed out. See where they go with it. That'd be kind of cool. You would have to think, out of all the races, definitely the Xi'an would be the ones that would have, mining tech or industrial tech. I'm almost sure that we're going to see that in the future. Fingers crossed.
Yes, fingers crossed. I agree with you. I think that it would be, and obviously we don't know much about the Kurthak. That's the one alien race that we kind of haven't met yet. I think that, but Xi'an seems to be, they have a long lifespan. You know what I mean? That there's, one of the things that I think you and I talked about this a little bit. There's a lot of kind of, they talk about their biology or they talk about kind of their cultural stuff. There isn't, I haven't, and probably Paul, like the historian or the galactic historian or somebody probably would say, oh no, there's lots of material in this. I haven't certainly found myself or read a whole bunch about kind of the industrial, like the rise of the, like how they rose up industrially. You know what I mean? That type of thing. But you mentioned that there were kind of like purpose worlds, you know what I mean? Where there were like factory worlds maybe or something like that. And that's, really interesting to me. And so obviously they mine. And so, obviously they need materials, so they have to mine. And so that's going to be, like you said, incredibly interesting. I would really hope that they would really have to sit down and think of something different. I would really hope that you would have, it would just be different than the way that the human ships were.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it would definitely be cool to see how they go with it. And, I'm, as Alien Week is coming to a close, I would like to see more alien races with the vastness of the universe. Can't be only the handful that we've come across so far. It'd be pretty wild to see a lot of different alien races.
Well, I hope they've got an ace or two up their sleeve for sure. You know what I mean? That would be very interesting. I mean, maybe the Vandal serves some, much uglier. Come to find out or something. There's always, it's like that. There's always a bigger fish, right? Type of thing. So
yeah. Maybe there's something more scarier than the Vandal. So you never know. Maybe the Vandal are on the run because something's chomping at their heels, kind of thing. That's why they're kind of tear-assing through the different systems.
Yeah, exactly. So
Well, cool, brother. It's been awesome, man. We definitely enjoyed the talk.
Yeah, we covered a lot of the bases, and like I said, this is not necessarily in our wheelhouse specifically, but I really enjoy the conversation tonight, and really am looking, just looking forward to kind of future content, and this was an interesting week. Like I said, an interesting week with the way that the BMM kind of shook out in the community, and just definitely a time for reflection on. This is the first time I actually looked into kind of the lore of the alien races, and looked into the podcast tonight kind of gave me an opportunity to kind of do a deeper dive into kind of who else is out there in in the verse, you know what I mean? In that capacity, I think it's been wonderful.
Well, with that being said, maybe we need to do a contest with the listeners out there. Maybe we should have brought it up at the beginning, because I'm sure everybody's asleep by now. But maybe we need to have a contest, because maybe we need to reveal that we're going to start a new channel, and we need to come up with a new channel name. Maybe we need to hold a contest to see who comes up with the best channel name.
I like that idea. You know what I mean? And maybe if you've happened to listen this long and you have an idea, you can get an early entry, or as many as you like, and maybe next week or that type of thing. Maybe we should kind of come up with a concept about it, and I'll throw in a few space bucks, you throw in a few space bucks, and maybe we can come up with something cool.
Yeah, I think maybe we come up with a ship, and next week we'll announce it. We'll announce the contest officially, and say, hey, you guys come up with the best name. Whoever comes up with the best name, we'll buy them something in the verse.
Well, and the one thing I just doesn't necessarily mean we're going to pick it, but obviously, or use it. But I will say, I love that idea, and I have the one thing I would do is I have a lot of faith that there will be some awesome variations, and obviously we would always give, if for some reason somebody did come up with the perfect one, we would always give you credit for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, you guys think about it, and we'll talk more about it next week.
Well, all right. I guess that's going to wrap up. I still can't believe it's been episode 5. So, for myself, thank you all for listening. Please take care out there. And Zal, I'll leave it to you for the sign off, sir.
All right, guys. It's always a pleasure. Make sure that you like, subscribe. Please post in the comments down below anything that we could do better in the show. And we'll see you next week on the Rock Runners Report.